Welcome to the Jeff Ball Show.
Welcome to the Jeff Ball Show.
Welcome to the Jeff Ball Show.
Welcome to Jeff Ball Show.
Welcome to the Jeff Ball Show.
Welcome to the Jeff Ball Show.
Welcome to the Jeff Ball Show.
Jeff, a serial entrepreneur, has founded and sold over 20 businesses, including one for over $30 million.
With a proven track record of success, he's directly employed over 500 people and is revered as
One of the most influential entrepreneurs of our generation.
Follow Jeff's life live as he builds his next business in real time
And introduces you to other inspiring creators and leaders along the way.
Okay, so let's start the show now.
Let's do it.
And so I'll give you a little bit of an introduction. I know a little bit. I
Yeah.
creeped your Instagram
Totally.
quite a bit, and I talked to Kyle a little bit. And on Reddit, I was really surprised because we go on Reddit a lot of times to try and find entrepreneurs, like the new up and coming entrepreneur group.
Yeah.
And when we went on Reddit, it seemed like a lot of people were like, "Hey, this Michelle, she's starting this new brand, and
Cool.
they had all these good things to say." And I remember Kyle came out of his room. He's like, "Oh, there's this girl Michelle," and I keep on hearing from different people
Wild.
that she is the new up and coming entrepreneur in Kelowna. And I was like, "Oh, well, let's see if we can get her." So
Well, I love hearing that, and I need to get on Reddit, obviously.
I don't think you need to.
Or I need to go check it
fans
out,
are
yeah.
there. Yeah. So you started an Under Armour or an underarm, like a deodorant company.
I did.
And is it a natural deodorant?
So it's naturally derived, non-toxic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to be in the middle space. I don't need to be that hyper all natural as long as it's healthy for us and it works. Yeah. We've been in business almost 2 years. In November, it'll be 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it that what all of a sudden one day you just woke up and you're like, okay, deodorant brand?
Yeah.
How did you come to that decision?
I was not looking.
Mhm.
I owned 2 other businesses, local, event-based, so loved it. Greatest way to get into business because there was no risk, no overhead, but also you're trading every minute for every dollar. So there was no real opportunity to leverage. But I wasn't looking. I was so busy. I was also working in nonprofit on top of it. And I've always looked for the bunny on, the packaging of products to make sure it was cruelty-free and all that kind of stuff. And I read something online that was the bunny's a great thing to start your research into how that product was made and what it impacts.
So
But that is
what's the bunny?
the bunny, leaping bunny. So basically saying that product wasn't tested on animals. And it's great, but a lot of companies use it as a loophole. So they might not test on animals, but if they sell it to a certain country that's required by law, then it'll get tested there, or their third-party suppliers or manufacturers might be testing on animals. So I learned that there was a lot more to it. So I would dig into every single product that we were bringing into our house. My poor husband was so irritated by me. He's like, our grocery trips are taking an hour longer. Like, Michelle. So slowly but surely, with a lot of effort, we were able to find those brands of products that we knew were what we were actually looking for in a product, except for deodorant. Either it would not work or it would leave a horrible, super uncomfortable rash. And I am a very athletic person, so I love sweaty sports. I love spin class. I love hot yoga. And at the time, I owned and ran a wedding and event planning company here in the Okanagan. So it's 38 degrees and you're running all day. You can't afford to stink. It's professional. And so I was getting frustrated and I found a big brand that claimed to be cruelty free. And I was so excited. And then I found out that they were owned by one of the biggest, baddest, the Procter & Gamble, Unilever type world, where there's not a whole lot of ethics involved in how they push out their product. It's, they'll say, oh yeah, we've got this cruelty-free line, but they still sell to countries like China, where it's required by law to test on animals in the personal care and home-based products before you go on shelves. So that day I found out that this company was owned by one of those brands, and I'm a stubborn French-Irish Scorpio girl, and I went, that's it. If these big guys can't do it right, this little girl's going to do it for them. And that's how I decided.
So when I was creeping on your Instagram and everything, trying to figure out your brand, I was thinking it was more for the all natural kind of thing, but it sounds like you're almost saying it's more like they're animal free animal cruelty angle is more of an important angle than the all natural kind of products and stuff?
So that's where we started. At that time, before I started really looking into starting SONDR, I would sniff the deodorants and pick the one that I like the smell of the most. That was
Okay.
pretty much where I didn't know a lot about like clean living or non-toxic. So it was about the animal testing at that time. And then as, we took 3 years from beginning of thinking to start SONDR to when we launched. So in that 3 years, I started learning a heck of a lot about armpits and sweat and products and what we're putting onto and into our bodies. So it was a matter of learning and that becoming more important to me, but also looking at my audience, at the people who are out there in the market and what's important to them. Yeah, people don't want, to buy products that are tested on animals, but are they as radical about it as I am? Probably not, because life is busy. And if I always said, if I can provide a product that is good for the people using it, good for the environment, good for animals, and it actually works and is a decent value, they can look at my logo and say, I know that what they're claiming and what they're saying is true. So the clean and non-toxic and naturally derived became equally as important as we started digging into and creating our brand. Yeah.
So currently your brand is twofold then. It's non-animal tested.
Yeah.
And it's also the naturopathic kind of thing.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Exactly. So ethical and non-toxic. And they kind of tend to go hand in hand.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so tell me about the process, that 3-year period of time. It took you 3 years to find that. Those products must have been really hard to find. How did you go about like figuring out what product? I'm sure there are limited products that are available that haven't been tested on animals, and then also that work as an underarm thing. Like how did you go about finding those products? And then when you did find them, how did you test them?
So I am I've been, I guess, blessed to say that ever since I was a little girl, I'm very decisive. I don't waffle. I don't kind of question myself or what I want to do. When I decide it, I do it. So I just am the Google queen of the world. I do a lot of research. And I knew that I wanted to make changes in the industry as far as transparency when it comes to things like cleanliness of a product or cruelty free and things like that. So I knew that I didn't want to just be a farmer's market brand, which that's a great niche. It's a great thing, but you're not going to make widespread changes by doing that. So I knew I didn't want to be in my kitchen trying to pour waxes together and see how it worked. I knew I wanted to find a manufacturer that I would work with to create the formula. So I just started Googling and started reaching out. But unfortunately, that was when COVID hit, and all of the product manufacturers out there were making hand sanitizer, so there was nobody really available. And then I connected with a company in Calgary, and we worked together for 3 years to come up with that formula, and they really listened to what I needed. And I, when I got my first round of sampling, I'm like, nope. And this is why this one doesn't work. This is what's important. And every ingredient that they would send to me, I would research individually to make sure that it was, not animal derived, not bad for the environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get granular with that.
I love it.
actually started a skincare company. It failed miserably, but it was called Hero Zebra Skincare, and I made like lotions and stuff, and I sent it off to, because I used to have really horrible skin.
Yeah.
I sent it off to California to like reverse engineer and everything. But let's get granular on your thing. So you found somebody in Calgary. What was the first call like? Like the first time you called that person, what was that first call like? And then did he send you a list of things, or did he send you a product to try? Or let's get like really granular on 100%. That first step, because that first step of the business is always like a lot of our listeners, that's where, okay, like I have this idea, what's the first step?
Yeah.
So tell us about that first step.
Yeah. And I'll preface that to say that my first step might be really different from somebody else's, but
Sure.
the most important thing is just take the step. Who cares if it's the wrong one? You'll find the right first step eventually.
Throw them out on the wall. Yeah.
Exactly. Nobody, unless you've been raised with entrepreneurs, you don't really know where to start. But I found a website, and I wanted it to be I wanted it to be BC owned manufacturer, or at least Canada, so that I could know, where these products were coming from, that I could truly trace like what we were doing. So I just sent, I filled out the contact form on the website and said, here's what I'm doing. here are kind of, I was really, really clear in what my deal breakers were, like what was really important and what I would not accept in terms, like, you know, I didn't want animal products in it. I knew that there wasn't needed for a deodorant. I didn't want animal testing. I wanted XXX.
Sure.
And I knew where I wanted my price point to be. I
Okay.
didn't know how it would look like to get there, but I knew, at least in my mind, I wanted it to be equal to X brand
Okay.
in terms of price, because I wanted to be accessible. There's some $40 deodorants out there. Nothing wrong with that. That's a niche of their own. It's not where I wanted to be. So I was really clear in my mind what I was looking for. So I reached out and I said, you know, I need it to be vegan. I need it to be non-toxic. I need it to be, you know, primarily completely natural ingredients, or else naturally derived. I need it to be, you know, ethically sourced. So, you know, ideally not things that are petrochemical based or things like that. And so we started from there. From there I got an email back, and then we did a phone call, and it was the formulator as well as kind of the customer service person who would be my first point of communication.
So right there at that point, did you have a tough time getting them to call you back or take you seriously, or did it seem like they were taking you pretty seriously from the get-go?
So I had a hard time hearing back from a lot of companies. They were pretty good. I try to make myself look bigger than I am when I begin, because some of these big companies, they don't want to deal with, they're going to look and go, oh, little girl, you're just wanting to sell this to your friends. Who knows? So I try to make myself look bigger, you know, by using the word we. Who knows if it works or not, but why not? We is me and my 2 dogs sitting on the couch with me. Like, and I have a very French mother who believes that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so I'm a bulldog. I'll just keep bothering you until you get back to me. But they were great. I didn't have to push them too hard. There's a story about this company later that I would love to share, because it could be a business ender for a lot of brands. But they were great. So they responded, I would say, within a couple of days. There are companies out there in the manufacturing world where, unless you're able to do hundreds of thousands of units a month, it's just not in their business model to work with you. But a lot of Canadian manufacturers were quite a bit smaller, so it's a bit easier.
So you managed to get somebody to call you. The reason I asked that is because, like, right now I'm building condos, and it's like those are like fairly like high ticket item things, and still I'm having struggle with getting people to take me seriously. And it's like, why aren't you guys taking me seriously? Like, I'm literally building like 20 of these things, and it takes like a little bit of pressure almost to get people to take me serious. So.
And is that like contractors and suppliers that you're referring to?
Builders. You know, like I'll phone like builders and be like, hey, I'm building 20 homes, and come over, and they'll be like, you know, and then they like kind of come in a couple weeks later, and it's no urgency. And I found some guys now that are taking me more serious, but I was like, I've never been in a situation. I think it might be more BC, but
I was just going to say, I'm laughing not because of you. I'm laughing because that's not BC. That's the Okanagan.
Oh,
Even
is that
trying to
what it
renovate
is?
a home. We were like, do people not want to make money in this town? Like, what is going on? And coming from Vancouver, Calgary, where there's so much competition that people will get back to you right away. But no, I've felt that same frustration and pain.
I never felt it as much in Alberta for sure.
No.
But so they called you after you filled out the form. You're using we and everything. From that point forward, did they take you seriously? Like, was it a pretty easy conversation back and forth, and they would put effort in? Yeah,
they were great for the first. So we worked together for about 3 years. They were great for the first 2 years and 11 months.
Oh, okay. Is that the story you wanted to get to?
Yeah, I'll tell you in a second. So they were great. They would always get back to me. And I think one of the biggest tips I can say when you're, trying to figure out, especially a new product, and communicating with a professional in that realm, like scientists and things like that, is I was really clear. Like, I would make a spreadsheet or a list that I would send them first before a phone call. Like, here's about this sample generation. Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't. And then refer back to what kind of the important thing was. So for me, again, nothing wrong with different types of products. I didn't want, quote unquote, the hippie deodorant. I didn't want a crystal. I didn't want it to smell like patchouli. I wanted it to mimic, like, our motto is make clean mainstream. So I wanted it to be an easy transition for someone who is coming from that, chemical ridden or antiperspirant world. So it didn't go from smelling like, you know, a tropical breeze to this very, very ultra essential oil patchouli type thing. So just knowing exactly what you want, and that can change. It doesn't mean it can't change as you learn or as you experience other things, but that way you can kind of refer back to it and be like, okay, here's the list that I sent you, and here's what that first generation of samples was. I like this. Here's what I need to change. And so my first generation of samples, it honestly smelled like pizza. It smelled like basil and oregano. I'm like, I don't want to smell like pizza under my arms. And so I just, you know, kept sniffing it. I wore it anyways, just to really experience every little bit of it. And then I created a document that I sent them first that we could both refer to on the call. So I'm all about paper trails.
Okay.
I don't like phone calls to begin with because I'm very ADHD. I want to remember what we talked about. But at the very least, I want to have a paper trail and something to refer to. So it's easy for all of us.
So now we're at the point where you're experimenting with the recipe for your deodorant. What about the money aspect in that? Or were they expecting a little bit of payment to reformulate these types of things? What were they requiring of you to kind of like be like, we don't want to just keep on funding this venture? Talk a little bit about the money at that point. You know, I don't come from money. My husband doesn't come from money, so we didn't have this massive capital. We had an idea of, again, where that price point wanted to be. So I kind of went backwards from there. So I said, this is what I want the price point to be. Okay. How many do I need to buy to make it that price? And so we kind of went there, and then after I gave them like $2,000 retainer essentially to create the formula. Okay. And then we talked about quantities. So it was it wasn't them kind of on a promise or a handshake or even a contract that if we find the formula, you'll work with us. It was insinuated, absolutely, but we paid to have that done. Time for that. Absolutely. And how many did you have to buy? And is your price point kind of like premium, or is it slightly below premium, or where is your price point? Yeah, we call it, so we, again, make clean mainstream. We don't expect a high quality product or a naturally derived product to be the price of a Dove or of a drugstore brand. But we also don't want to be that $40 deodorant. We want the moms to be able to give their child a non-toxic deodorant without not being able to afford it. So I thought back to my mom, who's a single mother. If this whole clean, natural revolution had happened when I was a kid, she wouldn't have been able to give it to me. And I think a lot of mothers would feel that guilt from not being able to. So we're right at the same price point as like a native type deodorant, things like that. So $19, $20 mark, and it lasts 3 months. So, perfect. I mean, if it was an every week thing, that's not the cheapest, but for 3 months, you can definitely make that happen and know that you feel good about what you're putting on yourself or on your child. Yeah. And so you got that first product made. It smelled like pizza and everything. How many times did you have to like experiment before you got to your product now? And are you still changing a little bit all the time, or? Yeah. So when we came to our final formula, in our minds that was final for our launch, it was about 5 generations of samples. And then I guess I'll maybe segue that into the story of what happened here, because it's perfect. So like I said, it took about 3 years, and they were great. Anytime I would send an email or a quick call, I had the direct contact to the formulator, the chemist, and to the customer service person. They were amazing. And then we gave them almost $100,000. That was kind of the number that we were having to spend to be able to get the amount of units, to be able to have that price point at the point that we wanted it. And so we had a very large shipment come in, and it arrived a week before we were launching. And I was excited, opening up the boxes, getting them ready to get, shipped out, and to our investors and friends. We had little micro investors, friends and family, just to help us get that first product run going, which my one suggestion here for anybody thinking to get into a product-based business, if you're raising funds to get product, raise a little more. That was my mistake. We just raised exactly enough to get the sticks and the bottles. And I was like, oh yeah, there is like operating costs that I probably could have had some help with too, but all right. Always a way to figure it out. But so we had almost $100,000 worth of product arrive, and I would say about half of it was sellable. What was wrong with the other half?
a plethora of things. It wouldn't spin up in the bottle because the product was too soft. It was cracking, chunking, cracking right down the middle. And while it's still, the formula still works, again, it's $19 for a deodorant. It needs to look good. And I thought, okay, we are now within about 5 days of our launch, and I'm busy getting everything ready for that. And I reach out to them, and for the first time in 3 years, I get this email that is really short, really not helpful, very dismissive. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I gave you so much money, and oh my gosh, like what's going on? I thought, okay, we're launching in a few days. I'll email them after that once I can kind of get this squared away. We'll take care of it then. This company had been in business for 30 years. We'd been working together for 3 of them. I wasn't too concerned. Before I had a chance to reach back out to them, we got an email that they had gone out of business.
Oh, no.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, I remember feeling really mad for a second. And then I've been very fortunate that I have, again, I've told you my French mother, she was awesome. And if you had asked me back when I was a child, I wouldn't feel the same way, but I never had more than 5 minutes. She would always say, yeah, feel sorry for yourself, cry. You get 5 minutes and then I don't want to hear about it anymore. And back at that time, I would have said, well, I want to be more spoiled. I want to be more pampered. I'm so lucky because I was mad. I got frustrated. I might have taken more than 5 minutes. But then I thought, okay, so what am I going to do? I called my lawyer. She said, Michelle, like you can go after them. It'll take, if you do get anything from them as the individual owner of that company or whatever, it'll cost you more to get it and it'll take you so long. So I think a lot of brands probably would have just called it quits at that point. And I've always been a pivoter. I've always been flexible. I've always been a stubborn little bulldog. And I thought, no, I'm not going down with this. So we kind of figured out how many we had that were ideal that we could sell. We had to test every single one before we'd send it out. It didn't matter how many sales we were getting that day, they had to be tested. And then the ones that weren't, we found ways to either donate to organizations like Mamas for Mamas or Soap for Hope. We went to a facility and like melted it down a little bit, and then we learned about using plastic-free, a paste that people could do, and just redirected everything. And ultimately we didn't really lose out.
Wow.
It was a lot of effort, and in that exercise or that effort, it was the best thing that could have happened to me and to SONDR, because in less than 2 days in business as SONDR, I was already a better business owner than I probably still would be 2 years from then, because I knew my product after that inside and out. And when you have a manufacturer, you don't necessarily need to know it as much, but isn't it great when you have such an intimate knowledge of what you're doing? So from there, I thought, well, there's a reason it's chunky and cracking. Now we got to figure out what it is. So we just did some research and like figured it out. We actually changed the formula a little bit just to make it more consistent of a product. And it's a better product than it was when we first launched. I know the brand better. I know my costs better. I know what I should be paying.
And what was it? Why was it cracking? And why did half of them not crack?
So there's a few theories, and without spending thousands of dollars to really test into it, they're only theories, but I'm pretty sure. So I think they were shutting their doors. They knew they were shutting their doors long before they told anybody else. So when you're making a deodorant, there's a lot of temperatures that are important because it's waxes and oils. And when you add certain things, it's got to be at a certain temperature. They just threw it in there.
Oh, okay.
And because it was such a large run of product, like you were asking, why did some not? I think some were probably done properly. And then as they were rushing, they were just like, get it in. And I honestly think that some of them probably weren't even the exact ingredients that, like, they were probably just using what they had to get it in. It was crazy.
And so when all that was said and done, did you lose money on that first order of 100,000 or break even, or where were you?
We profited.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Perfect. Right.
Yeah.
And then what did you do?
So then we figured out the new run of the new formula, or just like slightly adjusted formula. And I also upgraded my containers to make sure that it was just a better quality, because I think the non-twisting was a combination of the formula as well as the packaging. So we switched that up. And when you're small still and you're not in major retailers where you need to be the exact same all the time, you have that luxury to really dial it in. So that when you do start reaching out to these larger retailers or start getting better known, then you have it locked in. You like, it'll be the same. So yeah, we reformulated, rejigged, brought in new product or new packaging, which not only was it better quality, it also was all made of previously used plastic. So we always want to be better and do better every time we have an opportunity to do so. So we did that, and I just kept going, basically.
So right there, one question I do have is, was the formula, the actual deodorant that was made by one company, did they also supply the container, or were they two different companies?
Two different companies.
So you had to get your containers from one company, and then do you ship it to the person that made the deodorant?
Exactly what I did.
And then they put it in there.
Yeah.
And then the deodorant company sends it to you.
Precisely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're all the way to the point where you're in business, you're
Yeah.
rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
You just sold $100,000 worth of product with a major hiccup.
Yeah.
And you're probably feeling a little bit more on top of the world when you like realize you like had that massive challenge and then still were able to like triumph over that. How did you get distributorship, or how do you get distributorship? Is it mostly from your Instagram? Are you advertising on Facebook ads? Do you have anything in like drugstores? Is that something you want to do, is get in drugstores? Like, tell us about the distributor portion of this.
For sure. And I'll caveat that by saying I'm still learning and growing and figuring that out too. But I just go for it. I make lots of mistakes, and then I grow when I learn. So for the first year, I didn't spend a penny on Facebook advertising. It was a lot of organic traffic, word of mouth, and then I went old school. I do a lot of research, but I don't dilly-dally. I do my research. So I found a whole bunch of stores, reached out to them with, like, you want to have kind of a copy and paste type thing, but personalize it so that they don't feel like it's copy and pasted.
Sure.
Learn what else they carry in their store. If they carry another deodorant, tell them why you'd be a compliment. Don't tell them why you're better than that other product. Tell them why you'll sell well alongside them. And so I sent out a bunch of emails. I packed my car and I drove around Alberta for a week. And I went to 30 stores. And everyone that I walked into, they're like, you come in to visit, you're giving us samples? And I'm like, is that not normal? And that's what I learned, is that, this new generation of entrepreneurs, it is digital, and digital is awesome. And it's going to reach you more people, but it's going to cost you more to get there. So if you don't have crazy funding, go old school for a bit until you have a bit of money in your reserves to then start doing that. It was such a hit that I did the same thing a few months later, bought a plane ticket, rented a car, and I did it through the whole province of Ontario. And I think I visited 75 stores.
Man, that's exciting.
And it was fun. Like and you feel good because you're like, I'm in the trenches. I'm doing this.
Yeah,
and it feels good.
Yeah. So tell us about that. The first time that you walked into that store, were you nervous? Did you have like a little script that you kind of rehearsed in your head? When you went in to talk to somebody, did you talk to the owner, or how did you get to the owner? Like, tell us about that first day. Like, walk us through that first day when you're like, I got a trunk full of deodorant, and I need to walk into a store to try and sell deodorant. Like,
well,
what
let
would
me
that
tell you
be
about
like?
a day that I didn't have deodorant in my trunk first before I do that. And this is can I plug a store?
Oh, for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hardy Clothing in Salmon Arm. They also now have a second location in Burnaby. So we hadn't launched yet. I had no product. I had my little sample that I was using myself of whatever generation we were on. And I still had my wedding and event planning company at the time. So I was running a wedding out in Salmon Arm. And it was an easy day. I wasn't going to be starting until about 1 o'clock that afternoon. So I went for a run in the morning, and my husband was there to help me. And I said, okay, let's go find a restaurant, have some breakfast. There was no restaurants that we could get a seat for breakfast. So I said, well, let's just go to the grocery store, get some healthy foods that we can be fueled for the day. And next to this grocery store is this really big clothing, really cool looking clothing store called Hardy. So I said, I just want to peek around. I'm sweaty. I'm in my Lululemons from jogging. My hair is in a messy bun frizzy. I'm disgusting. So we're just wandering around looking, and I found a few things that I wanted to buy. And I was chatting with the girl. She's checking out our clothing for us, and there was a rack with some underwear, a brand called Hoo Ha, which is another female-based Vancouver-owned Vancouver-based company. And we just started talking about the brand, and then we started talking about local brands and women-owned brands, and I just kind of mentioned, I said, oh yeah, like I'm launching a brand called SONDR, not even with sales in my mind. And another girl kind of puts her head around the corner and said, I'm just in the middle of this transaction. She's like, don't go anywhere. I have a question for you. I said, yeah, no problem. So she came back and said, sorry, can you tell me what you were saying to my employee? It was the owner of the store. And I reiterated, and she said, do you have any in-store displays? And I said, yeah. No, I didn't. But I mean, I'll figure it out. That's the thing, is just say yes and figure it out. So I said, yeah, of course we do. And she said, okay, when you have product and when you launch, I'll take a full display worth. So she had never tried us, but she believed in what we were talking about, believed in the passion in my voice. So I think one of the questions that I was sent by Kyle prior, just to kind of prep about what we would be talking about, is how do you feel business and passion mix? Absolutely they mix, because you will never talk with more conviction than when you believe in what you're doing. Like I sold like $1,000 worth of deodorant with no product. It was amazing. So I think that might have helped me, and it bolstered my confidence when I did go to do my like tour to Alberta. And I just reminded myself that, because I was going into, independent stores. I wasn't trying to walk into Target and talk to the CEO. So I would just kind of walk in, I had my SONDR hat or a SONDR shirt, like shameless self-promotion. I don't care. Like that's the one thing I have zero shame. And I just, I never wanted to interrupt if they're busy. I'd wander around the store and enjoy myself. And then I would, ask. I would always try to have the owner's name if at all possible, learn who I was talking to first as well, get their name, and have a real conversation. My favorite thing when I think about sales, I had a boss when I was in sales for Cisco. I sold food to restaurants. I loved that job. It was great. He would always say to people when we were having sales meetings, and don't be weird. Like, don't be weird. Just be a human. And I've always remembered that. It's that simple. So you learn about their business, compliment them on there as real compliments. And so, yeah, maybe I was a little bit nervous the first one, but it's fun. And I'm coming to give you a free product. What are you gonna get mad at me for?
How receptive are they? Were they usually like, come talk to me, or were they kind of standoffish? What was the tension like when you first like walked into their office or started talking to them?
The fact that maybe two places as being standoffish stand out. Should explain it. They were all great.
Most of them are good.
They're all business owners too. They get it. You gotta figure it out, and you gotta grow, and we're all trying to make money. And yeah, they were great, and they were always excited to hear the story.
And you women businesses are killing it. Like
yes.
You guys are like outpacing the men in business by like a huge margin right now. Like Mr. Wonderful on Dragon's Den, I was listening to him the other day, and he's like, one of my criteria now is a woman-led company, because it's like all of his successes on Dragon's Den or on Shark Tank have all been like women-led businesses. Sometimes I wonder if it's like that network is a lot stronger amongst women than amongst is with men. You know what it is? It's collaboration. Is that what it is? Yes. Collaboration. There is no competition. I mean, there is. It's competition, but we have how many billions of people in this world? So the way I look at it, I respect a brand like Routine. They're my direct competition. There are billions of armpits. We don't need to be on all the same armpits. It's fine. Like, I actually look at them as an inspiration. These are another Canadian woman-owned brand, and they're killing it. And we have a different vibe, a different audience, and it's awesome. And I think that's the thing, is that women are kind of, we've always been looked at, and like, don't get me started on the CEO mentality. No, we are CEOs. We don't need our own compartment. We are women business owners. We're a business owner, just like a man. But I think people used to look at women as, oh, they're so catty and they fight with each other. And now if you look, especially in business, it's all about, what can I do to lift you up? What can I do to help you? And without you even asking. And I think that's what's happening. That's why we're lifting up, and that's why we're being seen so much more all of a sudden. Okay, so now we're to the point where you're rocking and rolling, you're selling stuff all the time, you're a successful businesswoman. Do you have aspirations to get into these stores that you mentioned you weren't really targeting at first? Like, is that a goal that you have? Yeah, absolutely. You're going there? Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So right now it's kind of figuring out those next steps and, relying on meeting good mentors that will help you, because, there are some doors that are shut. You don't find those contacts in the bigger chains as easily. And I just think about every network I might have. Excuse me for 1 second. You bet. I think about every network. So I remember that we had a friend who is a manager of one of the photo departments at London Drugs. Okay.
Well, lo and behold, later that afternoon, I have the contact for the buyer for London Drugs, and we're in communication. Shoot your shot.
Yeah. So how does that work to get into a store like London Drugs? I know they have like the buyers and they do the shelf space and all that. Do you know much about that?
I know a little bit, so I'm not
Can you share a little bit about how you
Sure.
get into somewhere like that?
I mean, I'll let you know when I get into one.
Okay.
But I'm working. We just started kind of looking into that side of things. So from what I'm seeing, there's some of these larger stores that they will only bring you in through a distributor.
Okay.
So now I'm focusing on getting into a distributor, but some of them not so much. Maybe it's because you found somebody who's a contact that is within the organization. So for London Drugs, for instance, I really want, that's a big goal of mine because they're really, really focused on local. We buy a lot of our cleaning products from there because they have a lot of like Nellie's Cleaning, again, Vancouver, woman owned, killer company for cleaning products, because they're completely cruelty free. So we've always gone there, and I'm like, this is where I kind of want to start my journey in like these larger retailers. And it's a great first step rather than starting off at a Target where it's however many thousands of stores. London Drugs has 73.
Yeah.
So I just reached out. I got the email address from our contact, our friend of ours that we knew. And I, created a sell deck and sent an email, and we communicate back and forth. And it all has to do with kind of their schedule. So every store has a different schedule of when they're looking for a certain department. So if you're deodorant, or if you're makeup, or if you're diapers, whatever that might be, typically a certain month or a certain quarter every year is when they're kind of considering new brands, because it's all about planning, like the planogram of their shelves, right?
Yeah. Did you go in person to that, or has this been just through emails, or?
Currently, this is just through emails because it's been receptive.
Sure.
But I am no stranger. I have no problem if I don't get an answer and I really want to be in that location.
Sure.
I will walk right in that door. and that's why I did the emailing prior to going even to any store that I walk into, unless I find it on a whim. I always email. And the one thing I can say to anybody who's going through that journey as well is, don't be offended when they don't answer you. They won't answer you. Like 95% of them will not answer you.
Okay.
It's fine. Anybody in business knows you get a million emails a day. You get a million, hey, I'm a SEO expert, or I'm a social media marketing expert, whatever that is. They get the same things from brands when they're a store owner. So I knew that I wouldn't get an answer, but I knew that if I always sent 2 to 3 emails prior to showing up.
Okay.
Spaced out about a week. I don't want to bombard. I don't want to be obnoxious. And either if they're not reachable physically, I'll call, or else I walk in, and even if they didn't answer me, they'll remember seeing SONDR at some point, even if it's in the back of their brain. There's some kind of a connection there. And a lot of them actually were like, oh my gosh, I've been kind of curious, and I've seen you on social media, but I just haven't had a chance to answer. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's your order.
Cool. Yeah, you get that. So what's the difference between getting into somewhere like that, and then you mentioned a distribution center? What's the difference? Like, can you explain the distribution center versus the independent stores?
Oh yeah, I think it's quite a big difference. So especially when it comes to personal care products, Health Canada, after Europe, we have one of the highest standards of what you need to meet in terms of like health and safety and ingredients, etc. But then these larger either distribution companies or large retail chains, they have their own set of qualifications. So you've got to be there, you got to be able to meet that. And then you also, when you're doing an independent, if they need 8 units of something, it's easy. Whereas you're going to want to plan, okay, how many units fit into a box? What size box is a case? How many of these cases are fitting on a pallet? How many pallets of each scent, SKU, size? It's a lot more planning in the background. And again, I'm still working through this part, but planning and looking for a distributor that matches your brand values and ethics and who you are and where you want to go.
Okay.
And where you want to be in is a big
And
thing.
these distributors, do they test out your product, or how do they evaluate the people that they want to distribute for?
I think they look at where you are as a business. Like, are you brand spanking new, or do you have some skin in the game already? They always take samples, 100%. And then they do ask you too, like, are you going to give all of our salespeople samples to bring on the road with them? So they're really wanting to vet and make sure that you're not, I made a really nice lip gloss one day, so I'm going to start trying to sell it right now.
Yeah.
They want to know that you're in it and that you're going to be able to fulfill what they're promising, because these big chains, they have expectations that when they place an order or a PO, your product's available. So there's fines oftentimes incurred if you can't meet those quotas. So it's at first when I was looking into it, I thought, oh, everybody's going to want a brand because it's more options for them. And then as I realized it was more difficult to get into a distributor, I thought about it more and thought, well, that makes sense, because it's basically like, when you have a friend looking for an employee and you're like, oh, I could refer somebody, but man, if they screw up, it's on me. So I think it's kind of a similar mindset, really.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Sure. Okay, so I want to talk about marketing just a little bit.
Sure.
And then I'd like to just get an overview of your wedding business. That sounds like it was a pretty cool business. Spend a little bit of time on that. And then I want to know who is Michelle, the woman behind the business, right? Sure. So let's just briefly touch on marketing, because it seems like a lot of people are really interested in marketing.
Yeah.
So what's your marketing strategy? What have you found that works? What have you found that doesn't work? What do you want to try that you think might work? Can you just talk a little bit about your marketing, specifically touch on things that you think kind of work, and then let's just do an overview of your wedding business school.
For sure. I hate marketing. I can't wait to afford a marketing team because I wasn't schooled in it. So my marketing strategy is a little fly by night. And like I said, we bootstrapped this thing because I made the mistake of, getting enough funding for the product. And then it's like, okay, I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to splash around. So how do I do this economically? And then in this day and age, you start thinking okay, how do I market outside of social media? Truly, because do newspapers work? Does the radio work? Do these things work? So I started off doing a lot of networking in person. So that's local. It's not pushing you out far, but you never know where that goes. And Kelowna is a hugely entrepreneurial town, and it's very supportive. So that was one stream of things in person. But again, finding events that made sense and remembering that this is not a social event. Great people who, a lot of them are my friends. I don't go there to hang out. So if I find that it's, I'm seeing the same people all the time, okay, let's rejig. Where else can I go? Where else can I go and visit and speak in person? Because you may have noticed I'm a little passionate. It bodes well for me. So things like that, in-person kind of marketing events, like getting a booth at a trade show or a booth at a market even sometimes. Although I did say I didn't want to be a farmer's market brand, it's an opportunity to get out there and meet people. So we devalue in person quite a lot. So that was one arm of marketing that was really important. And that organic reach for 1 year, that was all we did. So Instagram, Facebook, and I'm 42, so I'm not of the Instagram generation. I'm constantly how much can I talk about armpits? What's going on? So really, reaching out, again, wedding company. I have a lot of photographer friends and videographer friends, and they've really helped me out a lot along the way to come up with content. And I haven't done any Google ads. It will be a thing, but I was kind of coached in the beginning phases, just be careful because it's hard to kind of control with the costs and things. So that kind of deterred me. So that's social media has been the bulk of it, but a lot of philanthropy. It sucks when you're brand new. You're like, I'm giving this away for free. Oh God, I don't have any money, and I'm giving away. Oh my God, that deodorant's gone, and I didn't get anything for it. You have no idea how much people talk. Especially if you're part of an entrepreneurial community and it's somebody within that community that is doing it for a good cause, they will share because they're passionate. You don't know where that's going to go. So, excuse me, that was a really big part, is just giving back and truly doing what we said we were going to do. We wanted to be a cause-based brand. So how are we a cause-based brand if we're not helping something or someone? So that was a big part of it as well. And then I started learning about campaigns and stuff. So I was like, oh, I wasn't doing any campaigns. What the heck's a campaign? And just really learning and putting my feelers out there. I learned about the CDAP program, which I think is ending. So if anybody around hears about it, get on there if you're a business owner. So you get $2,400 in funding for marketing.
What's a CDAP?
CDAP, the Canadian Digital Adoption Program. So it's a grant.
Okay.
available to small business, and there's certain criteria, like there's certain activities that you can do with it. And so I had been hearing from a brand called Ferdinand Creative. They're a marketing agency. They had reached out a couple times and showed interest. They even made a point, which I thought was really impressive, to purchase my product, not just ask for samples. And I just didn't have the funds to utilize them. And so when I got that grant, I thought, well, I want to work with them because I'll learn. And they've been showing their commitment to me for months now. So we're working actually together as we speak, and they're kind of teaching me how to roll with campaigns and things like that. And I think we can't discount, like, there's so many free activities that you can do. So I really focused for a while on SEO. You don't need to be a coder type person.
Search engine optimization.
Yep.
Right?
So I put a blog on my website, and I would find articles, and I'm sure most of them did nothing. Well, Native deodorant stopped shipping to Canada in November, and I follow every single personal care brand. I have them email. I'm on the email list. I want to see what you're doing.
Yeah.
I want to see how you're doing it. How did you do this? So I get this email that Native deodorant stopped shipping to Canada. I start digging. Okay, how do I properly draft a search engine optimized blog so that it's going to find stuff? Found a few things. The title of my blog was Native Deodorant to Canada No More. So people who were searching for Native Deodorant Canada, guess who popped up?
Oh, that's
The
brilliant.
amount of spike in sales that came from that one blog post was unreal.
Wow.
It brought up like way higher on Google ranks.
That's
It
cool.
was wild, one post.
Yeah.
So just keep doing them. Nobody's going to get, most people might not even look at your blog section on your website. Who cares? It's not why you want them there, but it will start showing the crawlers on Google.
Sure.
And that was
Oh,
free
that's
again.
cool. Yeah. How would have you ever known that, right? If you weren't
Yeah.
like right on top of it.
Yep.
Okay. So cool underarm brand.
Yep.
That's like quite the story to go from. That's what I love to do, like hear like right from the origin story all the way to like this is where we are now. And also the granular stuff is just so cool. I think
Totally.
people just love the granular stuff. Let's just take like 5 or 10 minutes.
Sure.
Just give us an overview of the wedding business, because you're like a serial entrepreneur, right?
I am.
So give us a little overview of the wedding business. We'll just spend
For
a
sure.
little bit of time on that, because
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people are interested in it.
Yeah.
And then maybe like a high level, lesson or two from wedding planning. Never met a wedding planner before.
Yeah.
And then I want to hear about Michelle, like the
Yeah.
person Michelle, right? And
Sure.
let's tie your personal brand.
So
to
I'm
your
an interesting
company
human. I'll
brand.
probably do that. Yeah. So I went to school. I went to UVic for political science. Doing nothing with political science right now, clearly. And then I ended up doing an associate's in PR and communications. And I was working in nonprofit. And I found I was doing a lot of event planning, which I really enjoyed. I'm high ADHD, so sitting at a job all day long, every day, job does not work for me. So I really enjoyed the event planning aspect. Every single day is different. And we decided to move from the Vancouver area to Kelowna. And at that time I said, well, that's it. I'm going to start an event planning company. Well, in Kelowna, event planning equals weddings, because we're the second highest wedding destination outside of Niagara in all of Canada. And before we moved up here, we were just about to move. I started just reaching out to vendors in the wedding industry saying, can we do a styled shoot together and share the photos and everything? So everything was collaborated. Nothing was paid. We did it all together. All had access to the content to share. And if you put out a decent website and you respond to people's like inquiries, it's like catching fish in a barrel. There's so many weddings here. It's so easy to get started, and it was the best way to start a business because there was zero cost other than paying for a website startup, really, and there's no risk. And it was also the best because you put out fires. That's basically what you're doing, is putting out fires all day, every day. It teaches you endurance in business. It teaches you how to work when you're tired. It teaches you how to keep your mouth shut when your client is irritating you, and smile and nod. And it couldn't have been a better way to start in business.
What do weddings cost now? Like I know that's like a $0 or $1 million question, but like on average, where are we? Are we 40,000 to 60 for an average wedding? Like where's the mark right now?
Yeah, so I'll speak to Okanagan specifically. People come to the Okanagan, they want winery. You're going to be 50,000.
Okay.
The cost of the venue, the cost of, every vendor, it's expensive. It takes a lot of experience. You look at a photographer and people think, oh my gosh, why are they $5,000? Well, because they've spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and days and years of their lives training, getting better, having their equipment. And then when they finish shooting your day, they don't just go home to bed. They start editing for hours on end. And flowers, like everything's just gotten expensive. So yeah, you're looking 40 to 60 easily. And it's all about managing those expectations. Like, yes, the Kim Kardashian flower wall, it's beautiful. Unless you have 20 grand for that alone, forget about it.
And what's the high end? Like, what's the most expensive wedding you've ever done?
I did a wedding at Painted Rock Winery in Penticton, and they had done a bit of the planning themselves prior, so I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to say that they did that wedding for no less than $200,000.
Wow.
They arrived in a helicopter. Everything was like Gucci and Louis Vuitton. It was wild. They paid an extra, I think it was $5,000 just to have 10 people over the maximum capacity of the wedding.
Wow.
That wasn't the cost for them to be there. It wasn't the cost of the extra food, just to be allowed to have that extra amount of people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what would the most expensive, would it be venue for a wedding that expensive? Like, where do they, how do you even spend $200K?
The venue can be, but like food is a big one. Flowers. So if they're heavy on the flowers and that's somebody's priority, that's a big one. It's expensive and they don't, you can't get them used somewhere else. So if I would say, yeah, venue, flowers, the food is massive. That's a big one. So if they are big food people, it's going to cost you.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what was it that you decided weddings aren't for me? Why did you switch?
Oh, I think I learned really quickly in the industry, or in my time in the industry, that it definitely had a shelf life. I knew that because it takes, like, one wedding day typically for me was 18 hours. And you are running in 40-degree heat for 18 hours nonstop. And I loved it. I thrived on it. But then COVID hit and I had 6 weddings that year. So I had all of a sudden I had these weekends and I thought, oh my gosh, I can go golfing. There's a lake out there that I can go on a boat on. What? And I realized that I was sacrificing my life because every weekend in the summer, if you need that income is taken by weddings. And because, again, the Okanagan and really anywhere in Canada for the most part is so seasonal when it comes to weddings, that most beautiful time of the year, you're not part of it because you're running a wedding on a Saturday, let's say. The Friday, you're finishing up the planning for it. You've got the rehearsal. The rest of the week, you have what I call the wedding hangover. It's beautiful and sunny outside. You want to draw the blinds. You're so tired. You need a minute away from humans. And then you're planning the next one.
Sure.
So it's not like you get 5 days off and you're working one day. You're like you're in it constantly. So I knew that it was going to be, a season of my life pretty much right off the hop. And I always said the minute that I start kind of resenting having to work on a weekend and I feel snarky inside about a client is the minute that I'm done, because it might be another work day for me, but that's somebody's maybe their biggest day of their lives. How dare I ruin that with my bad attitude?
Sure.
So yeah. And so when SONDR started, I knew that I wanted to dedicate all my time to it to make it grow. It's my little baby. We have big plans for it that I couldn't be taken up. I couldn't have my time taken up by something like wedding planning, where it does require a lot of your mental effort and energy. And my other business required less. So I thought, okay, we'll say goodbye to weddings and focus on SONDR. And then I have a mobile oyster bar that I do on the side.
Oysters too. I just tried oysters the first time the other day.
Did you?
Yeah.
Congrats.
The girl that's coming next is actually the one that introduced me to them. So,
nice. Yeah. And what'd you think?
I actually liked them. I didn't think I would.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't think I'd like the texture.
It's not as bad as you think, right? Like, it's not as slimy.
Like, they're actually one of my favorite things now, so I'm a huge fan.
They're addictive and they're so good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before we move on, one thing that a lot of people are making mistakes is it seems like they buy something for 10 and they think they can sell it for 12 and make money, kind of thing. Are you comfortable with talking about the margins in the wedding industry a little bit?
Wedding industry?
Yeah. Sure. So let's say you buy flowers and your cost is $10,000. What do you have to sell that flower package for to remain profitable?
So I didn't do it that way.
Okay.
I can talk to that more with SONDR.
Okay.
In the wedding industry, as a wedding planner, I would do all of the communications, all the planning, but because you're not dealing with they might be professionals in their realm, but you're dealing with individuals, and I refuse to put myself on the hook financially. So let's say they decided not to pay for a product or a service that wasn't really mine. So I was kind of that middle person. So I would do the whole plan for the wedding, what they wanted. I knew what their budget was. I managed that. I gave them I showed them 5 different florists, for instance, or cake makers or whatever. And they picked, I like that. I was a liaison back and forth, but the payment came from them.
Okay.
So I acted on their behalf for every single step. They didn't have to do any of it, but I'm not paying it out of my pocket.
So how did you make your money then? Was it a cost plus, or was it an hourly, or was it a 5,000 for the wedding, or 20,000 for whatever it is?
Yeah, it's a package. So they had, it's month of coordination. So basically they had done all the planning already, and I would come in that month before, get all their information. I had a pre-done form. And then we just set up a call or a meeting and just say, okay, show me who your vendors are, what your plan is. And then from there, I would help them fill any gaps that might have been missed, where I would say, oh, you know what, we need to think about that, because most people are getting married for the very first time. How would they know? So I helped them finalize every little detail, create their very detailed timeline for their day, boom. And then I had a partial planning. So they wanted to be in control of some of it. I mean, they're in control of all of it, no matter what. It's their wedding, but they wanted to do some of the plans because maybe they know somebody who's a chef or whatever. Partial planning. And then full planning was,
you do everything.
I'm doing it all.
When you just did the coordination for a month, could you handle more than one client, or would it be kind of one at a time? Or
Oh, well, on the day of, I had a team. So there was one, I would ideally prefer no more than 2 in a day. And even then, I always wanted to try to find a way to show my face. It was, I take it very personally because it's a personal business. But with the pandemic and then all the rebookings, it went kind of crazy because people are all of a sudden rebooking, but you can't stop doing outreach for new clients, or else because you don't know when things are going to open back up. So we had a day where there was a few days where there was 3 weddings in a day, and you have a great team, but you're the one who owns the company, so you're the one that's going to take the most ownership of it. So it's stressful.
Sure.
But yeah, we did 3
that would be I think that'd be the toughest industry, wedding planner.
It's very emotional.
Because it's that first day just caked with emotions. People have probably planned that perfect day their whole life, and if anything deviates even slightly, it's kind of like when people go on vacation. Sometimes they're disappointed because they think about it for 2 months, everything goes perfect, and then they
create this thing in their head.
You can't live up to perfect expectations. So.
Yeah.
All right. My favorite part of the program is actually Michelle the person, more than Michelle the business. So this part I always like to just is there 2 or 3 events in your life that just shaped kind of who you are? You can tie them to entrepreneurship or business if you want, or you cannot. It doesn't really matter. It's just if you go back in your thoughts and you're just this was a really big event for me, or this changed the way I thought a little bit. Are there any of those things? Not
event focused so much, but things that have happened. So I grew up, I was diagnosed with depression at 13 years old. I, like I said, have extreme ADHD. I was not diagnosed with that until I was 40, 2 years ago. And I'm super open about talking about mental health massively. So if you have questions, feel free. But because of that diagnosis, and obviously having ADHD undiagnosed, I was very much not an introvert, but I really thought a lot. I thought a lot. I was very introspective. There's what I was looking for. And while I am very outgoing, I would come home and it would exhaust me. So that kind of introverted extrovert type phenomena. And I always, while I had friends, I played competitive fastball growing up, softball, had buddies. I was a jock. I was active, did lots of things. I never felt like I quite fit with other people. I thought, what they enjoy and what they like to talk about, not really, it's not really my thing. I don't feel like I fit with anybody. So I would always say to my mom when we were having conversations, I said, it's like a snow globe. And I feel like everybody's inside the snow globe and I'm kind of sitting outside of it watching. And I was never overly upset about it. I'm sure as a teenager here and there, I was like, oh, I want to be one of those girls that has 18 friends all at once, all the time. But honestly, it set me up for where I am now. I have never look to other people to make a decision. So I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, and that could be a great lesson is like, just do it, but do it with your research. Do your research, but don't let that research include questioning or asking friends who aren't doing the same thing that you want to do or have the same aspirations as you. Don't ask for their opinion.
Sure.
Just do it. So I was really fortunate because I was kind of, like outside a little bit, I guess, that I never did that. So I make a decision. I'm like, I'm doing it. I don't ask people what they think. When I was in my 20s, I did a trip to Africa completely alone, just me, no tour group, no nothing. And that really emboldened me. I feel like I can literally do anything because people are like, you were where? You did what? Like, you were around bombs and you weren't scared? And it just like, yeah.
So tell us about the Africa trip. Like, how did that come about? Was that part of your nonprofit stuff or what?
Yeah.
Africa is a place not a lot of people go.
So I mentioned that I went to school at UVic and I was studying political science. FYI, I didn't graduate. Typical entrepreneur answer, right? Didn't finish. But I was studying political science and I was really into like international relations, and I had to write a big paper about basically anything. And I was looking through, periodicals and stuff to figure out a topic. And that's when I learned about the Rwandan genocide. And I started learning about it, and that was my topic. And I got really, 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 really invested in that topic and really enjoyed it. And enjoyed it, that's not the greatest word, but passionate about it, I guess. And I decided that I wanted to go and see Rwanda and see what they've done, because their story of redevelopment after the genocide is one that countries should model themselves after. It's very impressive. But Rwanda's teeny. It's smaller than BC. So I thought, well, if I'm going to go, I might as well do more. So I landed in Cape Town, and I ended up all the way in Egypt. And then I visited a couple countries in Middle East. But there was times I was trying to get to Rwanda. At this point, I was in Tanzania, and I couldn't find a bus or anywhere that would take me to Rwanda because there's Burundi, a country is in between those two countries. I walked into the UN again. Another lesson in life: just do the thing. Go ask the question. If they tell you to beat it, then beat it. Like, it's not a big deal. I walked into the UN. I'm like, do you have any trucks going to Rwanda? Like any aid trucks or anything that I can like hop in? And they said, ma'am, we're not even driving overland through Burundi right now. We would suggest maybe finding an alternate route. So my mom, bless her, was like, I'll give you money. Just stop trying to get through that country. So that was probably my biggest experience in my life that taught me how to think on my feet, because nothing is what it's supposed to be in Africa. You might read in your Lonely Planet guide, like, this is what this should cost or where this should be. Never is. So I really learned to pivot and figure things out.
How did you get there? Did you fly? Or?
My mom bought me a ticket for a plane because she was scared. Yeah.
But that wasn't Invisible Children, was it? So that's an organization I was part of that was kind of in that same area.
Oh, I've heard of Invisible Children. Yeah. I was on my own.
Oh, okay.
It was just me traveling. I just wanted to experience, and I was kind of using that as a decision maker, I guess, on which direction I wanted to go. Because one of my ambitions was, in my schooling, was to work with Doctors Without Borders as kind of that liaison person between the head office in North America and the people that are on the ground in these conflict zones. And so I was just there kind of as a tourist, and I knew which direction I wanted to go. I never booked hotels. I didn't say I'm going to be here for 2 weeks, because what if I wanted to be there for longer? And I loved it, and I fell in love with the people, or who knows? So I just kind of...
So it's kind of a journey to kind of find yourself a little bit? In
a sense, yeah. Without, not the, eat, pray, love style. I think I was too young for that. I was 24.
Maybe too entrepreneurial for that.
Yeah. I mean, I started applying for my associates in PR and communications while I was still there, so I guess so. But just to experience the thing that I was so passionate about for so long, and get to be in Rwanda and meet the people and see, what had happened, what I was so passionate about. And that was an unbelievable experience and incredibly eye-opening and difficult, but I'm so glad that I did it. But it just turned into so much more, because now I'm just I'm invincible.
Yeah.
And in the best sort of way, meaning that you can throw an obstacle at me. I'm not done. That's not a failure to me. I'm going to go over it. Yeah.
So when you left Rwanda and you kind of had that adventure, in your mind, where were you headed? Like, what did you decide? Were you like, was there any epiphanies or anything when you left? Did you find?
Well, that's when I directed into PR and communications. Like I was literally, I don't even know where that came from in the trip, but that's where it came from. So I did that 2 years, and I guess, gosh, look at you. You're bringing things out of me that I didn't even think about. I guess that's kind of how I am where I am now because I did that associates in PR and communications. That turned into event planning, which brought me to Kelowna, which now I'm the armpit girl.
All right. Yeah. Well, that's about all we have today. But thank you so much for coming. And
thanks for having me.
SONDR is your last name, right?
No, my last name's Webber. SONDR.
Your last name was SONDR.
No, SONDR
Where did
is a
SONDR
name.
come from then?
I'll tell you. So I was building SONDR, and I was trying to think of a name. And every name I came up with, I'm like, oh, I hate it. I have to explain it, or it's too long or something. And I have a friend named Kelsey who's in marketing. And I texted her. I said, I need help. Like, I can't think of a name. And she's like, oh, okay, I'll be over on Friday. We'll have a bottle of wine. She comes over. She's got this paper with like 40 names on it, all in different fonts and things. And so we were going through them, and like one of them, I'm like, oh, that's a gin company in Vancouver. It's, like trying to find the ones like this one. I don't love that one. And then SONDR with an E, SONDER, was there. And I just kind of Googled the word, and it's a made up word by an author. And it means the realization that everybody around you has an equally as complex and vivid life as your own. Because we tend to think that we're the star of our own show, right? Or we are the star of our own show. And I thought, well, that could even be expanded to include animals, because that was a big part of our launch story. And what's one of our pillars and one of our incredible values is the treatment of animals. So I thought, oh my gosh, it's perfect. And it's short. And if people know what it means, cool. If they don't and they ask, it's a great communication or a conversation piece. And if they don't, it still sounds fine. Like it doesn't need explanation. So we knocked out the E to make it trendy and aesthetic. And here we are.
Sure.
Yeah.
So where can people find you if they want to get this deodorant and everything? Where do they go to test it out? Like give yourself a little plug so everybody that listened to this can know, I want to try this stuff. Where do they find it? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so you can find us online at sonderfresh.com. So no E in SONDR, SONDR, fresh.com. We're also in 75 stores across Canada and in the US. And you can find the store locator on our website as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michelle Webber, ladies and gentlemen. I'll have Kyle put all that stuff in the show notes too.
Cool.
And we'll send it out to our network as well. So
awesome.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.